for Blood. I'm your co-host, Nathan.
And I'm Julie.
Tonight we take a journey through two mortals' sordid affair with the silver screen creatures of the night.
Actually, it's just a podcast where we watch a vampire movie and then chat about it.
This month we watched 2014's Dracula Untold, directed by Gary Shore, starring the dwarf man.
The dwarf man.
Discount Orlando Bloom. I can't remember his name now.
Luke Evans.
Luke Evans. There
Starring
he goes.
Luke Evans. It goes without saying that there will be spoilers and some saucy language ahead, so brace yourself.
Now is a great time to pause, watch the film, then come right back to our tantalizing insights.
This is a little bit of a divisive film between the two of us.
I thoroughly enjoy this kind of crappy movie.
At the very least, this film has a really interesting relationship to real history. So in this episode, I'm going to be talking a lot about the historical figure that may or may not have inspired Dracula, Vlad II. Or sorry, not Vlad II. That would be his father, Vlad III. I have the wrong Wikipedia article open. Give me a second here. Vlad III Dracula, or as he is known, Vlad the Impaler.
Vlad Tepish.
Vlad Tepish. He has a lot of different names.
Like everyone back then.
Yeah.
And while Julie covers that, I'll be covering more of the plot aspect and
the, what do you call it? The film multiverse.
the dark universe.
The dark universe. Which is like the MCU for monsters.
Yeah.
Which is happening? Question mark.
Supposedly they're making one. We'll get into that. But first let's bite into this plot.
Let's get into the movie.
The meaty plot. So we start with Dracula, and he's used to be a janissary in the Ottoman military, but now he's retired. He's earned his great title of Impaler, but now he just wants to be a dad. Yep. That's really all he's looking forward to.
Isn't that what we all wanted, was just like good dad Dracula? Like, that's what the fans were looking for.
That's what I wanted. Can you imagine having Dracula for a dad? He's like 8 feet tall. That's a whole ass dad.
That's a whole ass dad.
But anyway, one fine Easter, his old buddy Mehmet sends a messenger and saying he wants 1,000 boys, and that's just too many boys for Dracula to stomach.
He's the Sultan of the Turks, correct?
Mehmet is the Sultan. And upon denying his request for boys,
1,000 boys.
1,000 boys, very important. 1,000 boys.
And a lot of silver.
Yeah, but that was the standard agreement. They were fine with the silver. No big deal there. Dracula realizes they're going to be at war, so he seeks out the power of a local vampire living up in a cave. And so he goes up there to become a vampire, and Charles Dance is this spooky old master vampire who's cursed to this cave for some reason. Who knows?
What is the mountain's called? Like Snaggletooth Mountain?
Broken Tooth Mountain.
Broken Tooth.
But I like Snaggletooth Mountain better. Or God's Thumb if you're a Hollis fan.
Which I am.
Yeah, he's gonna go eat some onions on God's Thumb to
audience.
save his people.
If only. Ooh, if only. If only. The woodpecker cried. Sorry.
No,
Continue.
Don't do that. But so Charles Dance is a spooky vampire trapped in that cave, and he says, "I'll turn you into a vampire because I want to, I guess."
Well, okay, talk about the terms of this agreement, because the terms are crazy. They don't make any sense.
So Charles Dance, to like set up Charles Dance, maybe.
What let's call him something. What should we call him? Because he doesn't have a name.
The Vampire Master, I think, is what he's credited as.
I think you did have a name for him. What were you gonna call him?
I don't want to call him.
What were you gonna call him?
I'm not calling him it.
He was gonna call him Vampire Daddy.
I've changed my mind. He's not Vampire Daddy anymore.
All right, so tell us what Vampire Daddy, what the rules of his
Vampire Daddy originally wanted to be extremely wealthy or successful or some bullshit. Who fucking knows? And so he like traded his soul with a demon or made a deal with a demon or something to be successful, but in like classic genie fashion, there was like strings attached, and now he's stuck in this cave
until
he can turn another person into a vampire,
which is extremely easy for him.
But he's like supposedly some like old Roman emperor or something like that. It's implied or is in a deleted scene. And but he's been in there for like I don't know when the Romans were. I was gonna do the math in my head, but I don't know. Somewhere between 400 and 1,000 years, I think, is a reasonable estimate.
Good ballpark.
So he finally decides that this man Vlad is worthy of becoming a vampire, so he can get out of this damn cave.
Probably because he's such a good dad.
Yeah, I don't know, something about how like I don't know. He's worthy enough.
Yeah,
but
sure.
There is the catch that if Dracula does not drink blood for 3 days, he'll revert back to human form, and Charles Dance will be stuck in the cave
until he finds
another
extremely uncharismatic actor and then turn him into a vampire. Maybe that'll work. I don't know. The terms of this agreement are totally whack. Yeah. They don't make any sense.
But our boy Vlad decides to accept and becomes a vampire, dies, whatever it is, grows some fangs, and flies back to his castle to fight the good battle. He like fights for 3 days, pretty much over hills to Helm's Deep, all this good stuff. They're all over the place, but he's like ultimately a failure because his boy gets kidnapped and his wife gets chucked off of a tower.
Yeah, and
he tries to catch her but can't. And
of course,
the sun's rising. He's like, "What do I do to the boy?" And his wife is like, "Just drink my blood. I want to die. I'm sick of being married to you." So he drinks her blood.
She's such a typical like good wife that comes with these movies because she just like supports him in every decision.
It's like the second she finds out he's a vampire, she's like, "Oh yeah, that makes
fine.
sense."
and I love you, and I'm gonna just support you in everything, and I'm never gonna make any choices for myself, and then I'm gonna sacrifice myself for you
to save the boy,
to save our son, who is more important than me, obviously, because I'm pretty and a good wife, so I need to die.
I mean, I feel like it's hard to ding her for like wanting to protect her child.
I mean, yeah, I'm just saying she's like a boring fucking character, and people need to stop killing wives and mothers.
Wives are boring.
She also falls like 300 feet
and lives. She's fine,
and she has no injuries. And
she like is about to die.
Yeah, she's like internally hemorrhaging or something. It's a very tall fall.
He does the whole like Gwen Stacy, Peter Parker catch thing that like doesn't say,
she lives long enough to give him a speech about how she's the perfect wife, so she has to die.
A speech.
It's
fine.
Anyway.
But anyway, he's now embraced full vampire mode to save his boy. And I guess the other 1,000 boys, but it's really just about his boy.
Yeah, there's a lot of discrepancy in this movie about whether or not his motivation is about his son or about like saving his people and saving the lives of these like 1,000 boys that are supposed to be turned over to the Turks.
Yeah.
And the movie treats it like it's one and the same motivation, even though it's a complete trolley problem. It's like, does he save the boy or does he save his people? Because it's one or the other.
Of the people. No, it's not one or the other. It's a part of it. So anyway, he's now a vampire. He like goes back and finds all of his wounded friends. He's like, become a vampire and let's go kill some dudes. And so he like makes a little mini vampire army, and they go and kill all of Mehmet's dudes. And there's like the big boss fight, surrounded in silver, and he finally saves the boy. And then he goes out and he's like, I'm just gonna kill myself. Guess it's my time. And so he parts the clouds and all the other vampires burn up, and some spooky monk from earlier comes out and saves the monk boy
who knows too much about vampires.
There's literally a monk in this movie who, like, when they initially discover this creature living in the mountains, he's like, oh yeah, that's a vampire. Look at this extremely detailed book I have about this specific vampire. These modern drawings that look like they were drawn in 2012.
It's so horrible. It's such a missed opportunity to have like a beautiful, like, illuminated medieval text with like spooky vampire drawings.
They couldn't draw for shit back then.
I know, it's
no idea what they were doing.
And weird, and I love it. And it's like there's just so many like lost opportunities for like cool aesthetic choices where they traded off for like boring generic fantasy choices, and I hate it. It drives me crazy.
Yeah, they didn't commit enough. But anyway, the boy gets saved and he becomes prince, and Vlad embraces his death. But then there's like a spooky guy who comes,
who is a racist gypsy caricature.
Yes. He comes and like brings him back to life with his blood so that he can serve him, is the implication. And then we flash forward to modern day where Dracula's happy and meets a reincarnated wife. I don't remember what her name is. It starts with an M, but it's Mina now.
Yeah,
because of course.
Because of course.
And she's just so wooed by his use of the
Yeah,
word milady.
He literally walks up to her and like street harasses her. He's like, "Milady," and
Yeah.
she's like, "Oh, it's hot actor Luke Evans. I'm so charmed."
And then he recites some poetry, and she's like, "Oh, it's my favorite poem."
It's so stupid. I was talking to a friend about it. I was like complaining about the ending, and she was like, she should have just maced him right then and there. And I was like, that would have been a much better way to end this movie.
And if it's garlic based, it would have like really worked. I think. I don't know. They don't ever talk about garlic.
They actually don't talk about garlic in this one.
We would have found out. It's a missed opportunity.
I know. And I think it's another missed opportunity to take this story and then like jump ahead to modern day London instead of going to Victorian London, because you're just stripping away more and more of like what makes Dracula Dracula. You're already turning Dracula into like a good dad and a superhero, basically. And
you're trying to make him a protagonist so you can join up with the Avengers later on.
It's so misguided. Nobody is asking for protagonist Dracula.
I am.
I guess you're the audience for this movie. Nathan is the singular one person demographic for this film, and they nailed it. He's just an
understood creature. You know? He just wants that love. He wants to be a father. What more can you want in life?
But yeah, I think the one big redeeming quality of this film is that it actually does try to stick to the actual history of Vlad the Impaler, which is pretty interesting. So I'm kind of gonna get into what that actual history is and how close they got it in the movie.
Yeah.
It's like shockingly close for being like basically a Batman Begins movie, like a copy.
I mean, Batman Begins is historically accurate. We know
yes,
that. So
to a T.
It was an
to
easy.
A T. You know, Chris Nolan is his attention to detail. But yeah, so the story's set in the 1450s, which is like in Italy, the Renaissance is kicking off and it's spreading throughout Europe. But this area, which is modern day Romania,
Southeastern Europe.
Yeah, it hadn't really gotten the brunt of the Renaissance yet, because it was such a powder keg of like warfare at the time, because it sat wedged between the Ottoman Empire on one side and the Hungarian Empire on the other side, which were like two pretty big superpowers of the time. And so they both wanted control of the area, but didn't want to go like outright invasion, because it would mean they would have to go head to head. So they tried to take control of the area through like underhanded political means and comical like spies and imposters and
just classic warfare.
Yeah, very very
Game of Thronesy.
Very Game of Thronesy, very silly. So the area, so we kind of understand Dracula to be like from Transylvania, because that's how Bram Stoker wrote him, but he's actually from Wallachia. The area was split into 3 kingdoms, which were Transylvania, Wallachia, and Moldavia. And Transylvania was controlled by Hungary, but Wallachia was for the most part independent, but in service to the Ottomans.
Yep.
And so they had that tribute, this yearly tribute to the Ottomans, just like in the movie. The number of boys that was owed there's different figures that it could have been. But it is accurate that they were asking for young boys to be conscripted into the army. That's all. 1,000 is a nice round number. 1,000 boys.
Count, it won't take long to count 1,000 boys.
And Mehmed II is a real historical figure who actually conquered Constantinople. They talk about that in the movie. But yeah, so this notion that Vlad was like raised in the Ottoman army is kind of true. He was kidnapped as like a preteen. Him and his brother Radu were kidnapped, and they lived in the Ottoman Empire for about 4 years. And the idea was that they wanted to indoctrinate the young princes to Ottoman rule so that they could guarantee their loyalty when they were returned to the throne.
Yep.
Makes
sense.
Yeah, it kind of.
A little bit. It works out really well.
It works out so well for them. So, while during this 4 years, the Hungarians put an imposter on the throne of Wallachia named Vladislav, which was Vlad's cousin, basically. And so the Ottomans sent Vlad back with an army to retake the throne, But through like this kind of convoluted series of events, he ended up going to Hungary and being like, hey, I fucking hate the Ottomans because they kidnapped me and they still have my brother. And I have all of this internal knowledge of how they work. And I want you to support me in taking back Wallachia and putting me back on the throne. So even though it was the Hungarians who put Vladislav on the throne, they're like, okay, yeah, we'll support you. And then they supplanted that person and put him back on the throne. At which point he sort of began to like get this reputation for being an impaler. Because it makes sense that like with such an insecure rule that he would have this really authoritarian policy when he was like back on the throne finally. He was like, if I don't show force, then somebody's going to supplant me because it's happened before and it will happen again.
You got to be extra spooky.
Yep, you gotta stab a bunch of dudes, basically. He like murdered his entire inner court and redistributed a bunch of wealth and land, and
murdered the bourgeoisie.
He murdered the bourgeoisie and he put them on sticks. And so everybody was really intimidated by him. And one of the first things he did as Prince of Wallachia was to, just like in the movie, refuse this tribute of 1,000 boys.
Or maybe 10.
Or maybe 10 or maybe 500 or like whatever it is. And so Mehmed sent an envoy to be like, hey, do this. And he sent them back with their turbans nailed to their heads.
Ouch.
Yeah, he personally drove like iron spikes through their heads to nail their turbans to their heads.
Live through that?
No, they were dead.
I was just saying, like, why would you take them out between there, getting back to like Constantinople or whatever?
Yeah, and so then Mehmed sent a force to like, you know, as punishment for that, and Vlad's forces slaughtered them all. And this is sort of where the movie diverges. In the film, he goes on... He
didn't become a vampire in real life.
We never know. It may be. But in the movie, he goes on the defensive and he holes up in a monastery in the mountains and to try and like batten down the hatches.
Yeah,
but
deep.
Yeah, basically. But in real life, he went on the offensive and he just like marched his entire army into Bulgaria and ambushed one of Mehmed's camps at night in a very famous battle and slaughtered thousands and thousands and thousands of men and put all of their bodies on pikes. And in the morning, when Mehmed and Radu, Vlad's brother, arrived and saw it, they were like, oh shit, maybe we shouldn't actually try and like oppose this guy because he's a psychopath.
Yeah, it sounds like it just a little bit.
But Mehmet lucked out basically because at the same time Vlad's like inner court, his like best friends and confidants were all like, dude, you can't just attack the Ottomans. It's like the biggest empire in the world at the time. And so they mutinied basically, and they took their own forces and took his strongholds and forced him into exile, which I think there's like a lot of sort of strange choices in the movie to make it about his son rather than like his brother, which like it's like this interesting betrayal with his brother staying with the Ottomans and then him, you know, deciding to fight the Ottomans.
But would your wife die for your brother? Because we need that wife to die.
Yeah. I mean,
so that he can have Mina in the future.
He had two wives in real life.
Both of them need to die.
They both need to die. But it's worth noting that, like, even though Vlad was extremely cruel and violent, he wasn't more cruel and violent than the other world leaders at the time. He had his signature, and so he kind of went down in history for it. Yeah. And one of the things that sort of cements him in lore and history is that in the 1930s, they exhumed what they believed to be his gravesite, and they just found horse bones.
So was Vlad really a horse?
We'll never know. But nobody knows where he's buried. Nobody really knows what happened to his body. It's like theorized that he was drawn and quartered and his head was sent to Mehmed as a prize. He basically spent the rest of his life trying to scramble back to the throne and failing again and again. He was kind of a sad and pathetic figure in history, to be honest.
little harsh.
I mean, a little bit. It was like he had this really insecure rule. He was only partially legitimate. He was
what
like...
rule is legitimate, though?
I mean, there is...
Kings don't exist.
Asking the real questions. But yeah, so a lot of that history comes through in the movie in terms of the like plot, but then the actual texture and color of the like Middle Ages that they had the opportunity to use in the movie to very like atmospheric and spooky effect was just like pushed to the wayside, or it's like there but you can't see it because the lighting's like too dark,
slightly out of frame.
You know, it's like the production designers tried and the filmmakers didn't prioritize it. They didn't care.
Interested in it. They wanted their superhero origin story, not a medieval fantasy tale.
Yeah, because like this period in history, it was like the transition from Gothic architecture to Renaissance architecture, and it was like prime time in history for silly hats. And nobody in this movie has a silly hat, and it makes me so mad. And nobody
has a silly breastplate.
He does have a silly breastplate. The armor offends me. Honestly, the big dragon breastplate is not even the worst of it, but like they didn't try, and I'm so mad about it. And I want crespines, and I want hennins, and I want flying wimples, and I want silly hats and like cool outfits, and instead they gave us like just like boring gray colored fantasy outfits, and I think it's very disappointing. That's my 2 cents.
I don't even really have a rebuttal. It's
not inspired, let's put it that way. And it would have really elevated the movie, I think, to have some of that historical texture in it. But I don't know. That's my review of the movie. It's disappointing.
Yeah. I think everybody would agree with you.
Based on the success of this film.
It did not perform well. It was pretty much critically panned. I think all the building blocks are there, though, for like this to become semi-cult classic-y. You know, at the end of the day, like the plot is not great, but it's not terrible. You know, the costume design isn't great, but it's not horrendous.
Yeah.
And it's fun. You know, you get to see Vlad turn into a giant swarm of fucking bats and like do crazy shit. Like
that choice is so bonkers.
Like at the end of the day, it's not a good movie, but I still have fun with it. I can see other people having fun with it.
I did not, but I guess I'm just no fun.
No fun for Julie.
No fun for me.
But they made some like really interesting choices, especially trying to fit it into Universal's dark universe, which is just so wild. So for those of you who don't know about this whole plot by Universal, they want to make their own Avengers-esque team-up movies, interconnectedness, and
it's just
really like it's just a weird idea because I don't understand how it works. But
nobody really has nostalgia for these characters, most of which come from the 1930s
or earlier. Like you'd be like 80 years old if you remember that movie coming out.
Yeah, it's a strange thing. Like there's sort of this formula for like nostalgia where you want to go back to the 80s or the 90s to really hit what people are like nostalgic about, and it's just this strange idea to be like, let's take a bunch of these old monsters and try and modernize them and put them in a way that like cool teens will like. I don't what?
Extreme teen monster movies. But I mean, these are like classic monsters. They're very recognizable. Some of the original ones that they wanted to include are The Mummy, Bride of Frankenstein, Creature from the Black Lagoon, The Phantom of the Opera, which is a buck wild choice. The Hunchback of Notre Dame, The Wolfman, Van Helsing, you know, like all of these monsters who you can say and people are like, oh yeah, I'm aware of them, but that's about as far as a lot of these go.
Yeah.
Like I can't tell you much about the Creature from the Black Lagoon other than he's like a fish man
and that he's sexy.
Became very sexy. In the Shape of Water, thanks Guillermo. But like how they're gonna interconnect these, these are
they're all
antagonists.
They're all the villains of the story. So the idea that they would come together as like a superhero team up, essentially, is
and I don't know if they were necessarily all going to be like good guys, but they were definitely going to have to convert some of these to good guysness. And they like set that up a little bit with the Mummy, Tom Cruise's Mummy, where he becomes mummy, I guess. I don't know. I fell asleep in that movie. It was really boring.
Yeah,
but they have like that agency that Russell Crowe works for, Prodigium or Prodigum. Or,
I don't know. I didn't see this movie, but I know it has Sophia Boutella in it. And she's really hot. That's all I have. That's my only.
She's probably going to come back.
That's the only thing I have to say.
The Mummy sucked, but it didn't suck as much as Dracula. But, right, Russell Crowe is Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde, and he's like hunting supernatural threats or something like that.
Really?
Yeah, it's. I must have been asleep for this part because I would have like found that really interesting that they have this supernatural hunting team, but they didn't.
I just hate that it's set in modern day. I think that's so boring.
But how will we relate to the teens? But they do have like they had an interesting like initial cast. We have Russell Crowe as Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde, Javier Bardem as Frankenstein's monster. Johnny Depp is the Invisible Man, which is disgusting.
Yuck.
But I guess in theory, like he wouldn't really be on screen.
I don't care. It's like that stupid Agatha Christie train movie where he gets like stabbed in the beginning, and it's like, oh well, he like I like the fact that I get to see Johnny Depp get stabbed a bunch of times, but I don't like the fact that he got paid for it. You know,
for sure.
Like,
but he's out, so it's fine.
Okay,
and
good.
Tom Cruise as Tom Cruise.
Tom Cruise is Tom Cruise.
As Nick Morton. I don't even know who the fuck that is, but Sophia Boutella as the Mummy.
Yes.
But with the kind of failure of the Mummy, they revised their strategy. So they've like postponed and canceled everything.
Did you ever see that trailer that they released with the fucked up body?
So good. It pretty much epitomizes this like dark universe.
Oh my god, that was
everything
my
going wrong.
Favorite. It was just like, yeah, they fucked up.
And so they've like canceled and redone everything. They recently released a trailer for The Invisible Man, not starring Johnny Depp. Right. That actually looks pretty interesting.
Stars Elizabeth Moss, which is like really the only reason that it appeals to me because it's Elizabeth Moss.
I don't know. I think they're like subject matter that they're approaching. I think is a bold decision.
Yeah, it's interesting.
It's good.
It's very interesting.
I'm curious.
We'll see.
The other one that they've announced is The Dark Army.
What the fuck is that? Wait, what is that?
I don't know. Nobody knows.
Is that
the director? I don't remember. It's like somebody relatively known. I can't remember who it is, but he said that it'll be based around The Bride of Frankenstein, which is another thing I'm just like not familiar with.
Yeah, I don't know anything about Frankenstein.
But essentially, they're moving more towards like focusing on standalone films and like developing those stories, and maybe we'll revisit this whole interconnectedness once they've got a couple decent movies under their belt. But Dracula Untold really wanted to be a part of this. There's a lot of debate on whether or not it was going to be included originally or after the fact. There was one interesting article that talked about how the filmmakers heard about how they wanted to make this dark universe, how Universal wanted this dark universe. So they reshot the film a little bit and added that kind of like post scene where it's modern day so that they could bring Luke Evans into this dark universe thing. But
the point in the process where they took out the Baba Yaga, because there's a Baba Yaga in the deleted scenes of this movie, and it's so weird.
That's gonna be the first like big bad is Baba Yaga.
Oh my god, I hope so. There's a Baba Yaga in that stupid Hellboy movie that neither of us saw. What a choice.
Oh, I forgot that existed. Thanks for reminding me. So sad.
Yeah. One day we'll get a cool Baba Yaga in a movie. One day.
Yeah, one day. But I think the idea of including Dracula as like a protagonist in your like cinematic universe is such a bad idea.
It's like trying to make...
He needs to be the big bad.
Yeah, it's like trying to make Dracula into Tony Stark. Like,
yeah,
what?
You can't.
The fuck?
He needs to be the Thanos or whatever.
Oh god, let's stop talking about Marvel. It's giving me hives.
Disgusting. But he's like he's the ultimate monster, right? He's like the big scary guy.
And scary. He's not supposed to be a good dad. That's all this movie wants.
Be a good dad.
It's just like all this movie wants to talk about is like there's like 100 scenes in this movie of like, oh, look at Luke Evans and his cute son. They're so cute. Look at him. Cute. He's such a good dad. Drives me crazy.
What a glow up. Went from dwarf to good dad.
Dwarf. Oh my god.
Evans. Poor man.
Yeah, he's a boring dude.
He just looks like a bargain bin Orlando Bloom.
He is a bargain bin actor.
Bad.
It's rude.
Such a mean.
He's so uncharismatic though. Like I see him in a movie and I'm like, ooh, boring. All right, let's get to that vamp score.
Vamp assessment: vanity, appetite, mortality, powers. Starting off with vanity, there's not a ton to talk about here. When he becomes a vampire, all of his like scars go away that he received from his time as a soldier. But he really looks no different.
Yeah, not really.
Still, and he's not like sexy.
No,
because he's Luke Evans. Who'd you really? I'm just thinking.
I mean, I think he's supposed to be attractive.
I don't know. I'm thinking that it'd be really funny to take like somebody like Luke Evans who's not that attractive, and then
replace him
with like a really attractive actor.
It's like Luke Evans, and then he becomes a vampire, and then it's Orlando Bloom.
It'd be so good.
Oh, it'd be so insulting.
I'm gonna feel so bad if Luke Evans listens
I know.
to this and we're just like dunking on him.
Luke
left
Evans,
and right.
don't listen to this podcast.
You're not allowed.
Banned.
I'll feel so bad. Yeah, and like the daddy vampire daddy Charles Dance. I really hope it's Charles Dance. I just got super nervous that it's not actually Charles Dance.
I got just super nervous just now that we were talking about Luke Evans is not actually okay. It's actually Luke Evans.
No, it's for sure.
I'm gonna look up Charles Dance now because.
But he's like he just looks like a ball sack. Sorry if that's a little crude.
Wow.
But he's like super wrinkly and old and like.
How dare you talk down to vampire daddy like that?
He doesn't look good. He's like.
I mean, but that's like a good thing.
Yeah, I mean he's like a spooky vampire, and maybe that's just because he's like not getting good blood or something. I don't fucking know.
I mean, I like his take on. It's like one of the highlights of the movie is like his performance and like
he's not a sexy
his look.
vampire.
No, he's not sexy. He's not vain. There's definitely not a lot of vanity in this movie.
No.
Yeah. And they wear stupid outfits. Sleeveless armor. Get out of town.
You gotta protect the juicy bits. Those arms are fine. So appetite wise, again, not a lot of information. We're gonna get more into like mortality and powers. That's the fun parts of these movies.
Yeah.
Like we know he needs to drink blood, but it seems like he's fine not drinking blood. So I don't know if that means once he is a full vampire, he's fine not drinking blood. There's next to no mention of non-human blood. There's a lot of like skeletons in Charles Dance's cave of, I believe, non-human stuff, but I don't know. Who knows?
Yeah.
I mean, he's in a cave. How many fucking humans are going up into that cave all the time if he's stuck in there?
I don't know.
So, whatever.
Spelunkers.
Spelunkers. The Descent, part 8. So, I want to move on to mortality because I find this more interesting. The big one that they talk about is a stake through the heart.
Mm-hmm. And sunlight. Sunlight
is very bad. They do this like dissolve-y thing. Even their blood is affected by sunlight. There's like a part where when they like first find the cave, Vlad slashes at the vampire, like trying to get away, and then he like crawls in the sun and like the blood disintegrates off the sword.
Ooh, special effects.
Yeah. The really interesting one that they bring to this movie is this idea of like how potent silver is to vampires,
which is not always. It's like in movies where there's also werewolves, they usually attribute it to the werewolves.
Yeah, it's more of a werewolf thing, but traditionally silver and vampires are kind of the same thing. That's, a lot of people postulate that that's why vampires don't have a reflection is because it's polished silver.
Ah, yes.
But when he's around silver, it like has a very big physical effect on him. Even seeing it makes like his vision go fuzzy, makes him weaker, slower, all of this stuff without even necessarily touching it. Mm-hmm. Which is more what you would see that a vampire touches silver and it like burns them, that kind of stuff.
And crucifixes too.
Yeah, crucifixes are also super
but
bad.
They're not like lethal. They're just...
But they are enough to like ward off that entire vampire army, right? That's
true.
where the monk who knows too much
kind of
shows up. He like has a
machina.
big crucifix and shoos all the vampires away. But I think again, crucifixes make sense in this one because the vampirism supposedly originates from a demon,
right? And Vlad is also not just a good dad, but a good Christian.
Yeah, they were celebrating Easter. He loves his Jesus, his boy Jesus. Where this movie really wants to focus on the vampire, though, is in the vampire's powers. Mm-hmm. The most prominent being just the fucking bats.
He just turns into a swarm of bats.
Yeah, it's not one bat.
Who made this decision?
It's not one small bat. It's not one big bat. It's like 100 bats. so many bats, and he can turn like part of himself into bats that lets like
and he can
swords
control
pass through.
bats in a way that is like bat bending, where he can just like shoot bats like at people, and then
he
it
like
sends
summons them and like controls them,
and then it like a bat is like, I don't know how many ounces, like they're little shits, right? And like a bat hitting you would be unpleasant, but it wouldn't send you flying like 20 feet into the air.
Have you ever been hit by a bat?
But he literally fights the entire like Turkish Janissary Corps with a swarm of bats.
Yeah.
And it's like, dude, did you think this was gonna work? It
doesn't.
doesn't.
We never really see like
it doesn't
them die. They're just like on the ground, like trying to get bats off of them.
They are mostly inconvenienced.
Yeah, but it worked sort of.
No,
it still lost. Well, it worked if they didn't have their backup plot of kidnapping the boy.
Right. Okay. Sure.
He does have healing. Like we said, his like scars all go away. And then
he's got super hearing and sight.
Yes.
So
he can like see stuff super far away. He see like when he first becomes a vampire, he sees like a spider eating something. I don't remember.
But it has like knife sounds with its little feet. It's going.
Well, I guess it's fangs, not a feet, but
whatever. It's so funny.
But he also like has spooky looking eyes. That's like a huge part of telling these things are vampires. Or they have these
eye
like
shine.
Yeah, but it's like red and spooky. And all the vampires have them. So if you ever see somebody with red eye shine,
it's a vampire.
It depends on what you want out of a vampire.
Or that's just your cat.
Yeah, a little bit of both.
Ooh.
They're super strong, super fast. They got the fangs. Interesting thing is they do have them on their like second set of teeth, not on your like more traditional canine looking teeth. I don't remember the names. I think it's like secondary incisors is the technical term, but
I don't know.
Yeah, your front teeth,
not
second set of teeth. That's where they put the fangs in. Other fun powers are weather control, maybe, supposedly.
Yeah, wild.
When he shows up to like do the final boss battle thing, he like brings a thunderstorm with him because it's during the day at that point, so he needs to block out the sun. Even though UV rays get through clouds, you can still get sunburned.
He's just the Avatar.
Yeah. And then he like
Minus
disperses the clouds to kill himself and all of his vampire friends. So weather control, that's a new one.
That is a new one. I think that one is unique to this movie because it is purely a plot device. It is like,
and they don't talk about it.
No, it's just they're like, how do we do this? And they're like, I don't know, give him control of the clouds.
Or just really convenient timing when he like moves his arms. Another kind of weird one is like the armor and clothes are part of Dracula.
Yeah.
There's at the end the like really climactic point where Mehmet's like about to stab him with a stake to kill him. The like armor is kind of like splitting away, implying that the stake has power over him. It could also be that he's like about to turn into bats. It's very unclear though.
No, I mean, I completely tuned this scene out because it's long and extremely boring. But I do remember just being like, we got some special effects happening. I don't know why. This is weird. His like chest is opening up for the leg of a wooden stool or something.
You got it. It's weird like, though.
And what's going on?
I don't know. It's just not clear filmmaking, unfortunately.
Yeah. It's really bland filmmaking, beginning to end, man.
That makes me sad.
I know.
I enjoy this. And we talked about how like maybe being trapped in a cave if you become a vampire. I don't know if that applies to Vlad. It doesn't seem to.
No, it's not like now that he's a vampire, he has to sit in a cave for 100 years until he finds a man worthy enough to also be a vampire. What the fuck were they thinking? It doesn't make any sense. He did make
like 100 vampires immediately.
Yeah.
So maybe he doesn't have to go to the cave because he's been a good vampire.
Get your lore straight.
Yeah, it's fine.
It's not fine.
It's fine. It's vampires. Anyway,
Luke Evans.
Well, not the most interesting vampire. I do think this is like a super powerful vampire.
Yes.
That would stack up with others, which makes sense because they're going for this whole like superhero origin story.
Yeah.
So they're giving him a lot of power, but
yeah, he's definitely up there on the power scale. So what he lacks in the other categories,
he makes up for in killability and power.
Yeah, you can kill him and he can kill you and put you on a stick.
Yep.
That's his signature move.
But he doesn't do that anymore. He's a dad now.
Yeah, he's not. It's so, this movie just constantly contradicts itself at every turn, which drives me crazy. But it's like, okay, so he needs to go 3 days without drinking blood.
Yeah.
But
he's got this.
Because he needs to prove that he's not bloodthirsty, basically, is the moral implication of that. But then he goes and he slaughters like 10,000 people in like one fell swoop, which is like, okay, what makes that better than drinking one person's blood? And also, how did he not in that process drink somebody's blood?
I know,
like either
28 days later, a single drop of blood.
Yeah, he could have gotten like a drop of blood in his mouth, but also like, why didn't he's like literally succumbing to his bloodthirst, and like he is slaughtering a bunch of people. So why isn't he also just like giving in and drinking blood? It has to be his wife's blood because sacrifice.
It's not just his wife's. I think he could give me blood. I think it's intent. Maybe
it has to be about sacrifice.
I don't know.
It's garbage.
Yeah, it is. But it worked out in the end. He's a full-fledged vampire now. We got our boy Dracula. He's makes it to 2019 apparently.
Yeah, and he will probably never get a sequel.
Sorry, Luke Evans. You thought you had found what?
A shame.
Oh, I thought you said Chris Evans. I was like, no, it's Luke Evans.
I was wrong this whole time. Can you imagine this movie with Chris Evans?
I mean, I like Chris Evans in roles that aren't Captain America.
Yeah.
Like him as Lucas Lee in Scott Pilgrim is fantastic.
And in
him
Snowpiercer.
in Snowpiercer is amazing. I feel like there's another movie. I mean, even him as like the Human Torch is
oh my god,
so terrible.
You're gonna just like cite the Human Torch as like better than Captain America. Wild.
Yeah, I am.
This is just gonna become a Chris Evans podcast.
He's fine.
He's more interesting than Luke Evans.
They're brothers. Be nice.
They're not. All right. Yeah, I think that's about it. Dawn approaches.
Yeah, for sure. I think if you like vampire movies, this is like a perfectly palatable vampire movie.
Nathan, you're gonna love this one.
I wouldn't say I love this one, but I do enjoy it. Every time I watch it, I have a good time. It's fun. There's lots of bats. I like bats.
Do you think people should check it out? Should watch it?
Yeah. Always.
Yeah, go watch it. You can make a lot of fun Batman Begins puns.
Yeah.
Because there's
a lot of similarities. There is no Liam Neeson's though.
It's a Batman.
I guess Liam Neeson's is
what?
Vampire Daddy. There's like no parallel. He doesn't like spend time training with a Liam Neeson's.
I've never seen a Batman movie, so I don't know what the fuck you're talking about.
You can't compare it to something you've never seen. This is ridiculous.
All right. Okay. Do you have any housekeeping?
Couple of like announcement thingies, updates. You can follow us on Twitter and Instagram at Out for Bloodcast. That's where we put a lot of updates on what episodes are coming out and when. A fun thing and a reason why you should go follow us on Twitter is we're going to put a poll up for episode 5. We want y'all to help us decide which movie to watch. So keep an eye out for that. That should be up the first week of December.
And the reason it's going to be for episode 5 as opposed to episode 4 is because we have our first special episode coming up next. Ooh, what's it going to be? You're going to have to find out.
It will be a lot of fun, though. We had an absolute blast.
We've got
some
guests on it. That'll be a really good time. So
we also have a Patreon if you want to support us. I'm going to be starting a vampire TV show blog where I watch the Vampire Diaries very painfully.
Oh my god.
Oh my gosh, we started that and it's a doozy.
It's a great show. What are you talking about?
I was like really excited to start this blog. I was like, this is going to be fun. Get to catch up on all the vampire TV shows I've never seen before. And it's going to be a marathon of work, but that'll be there. We also will probably put some more like werewolf centric episodes up on that on the Patreon. You can support us if you would like. Anything else you want to bring up or talk about?
No, I think that is about it.
Okay, so for all our vampire listeners out there, remember to stay out of the sun.